All right. Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome to Minds Behind the Music. I am your host, LA. Here with me is my good friend and fellow bandmate, Nick Bergamini.
What's up, guys? Thanks, Lewis, for having me. It's great.
Oh, anytime. Thank you again for coming on. So,
Yeah, no problem.
so as everyone knows, it's already been 1 year since the great Neil Peart passed away. Again, may he rest in peace, and he has a amazing legacy that we are going to touch on today. Today is a little brief article review on Neil Peart's legacy, and I'm also going to talk with my drummer on his experiences, like with Neil Peart and his influence, and what Neil Peart's influence and Rush's influence has done on him, and so forth. So
Yeah,
let's get into this little brief article. I believe this is an ABC article or ABC News article that we've done. The spirit of Neil Peart, Rush drummer, died 1 year ago today, which was 2 weeks ago, I think, 2 or 1 week ago. I can't exactly remember. So let's forget what day is. Day is 21st, so 2 weeks ago
yep.
or 3 weeks ago. Today, January 7th, marks 1 year anniversary of the death of Rush's Neil Peart, one of the most lauded rock drummers of all time, as well as the band's primary lyricist. And as I actually talked to a lot of people about this, and they did not know that Neil Peart wrote the lyrics for a lot of Rush's music.
Yeah, I mean that's actually one of Neil's biggest, personality-wise, one of his biggest distinguishing factors is everybody who's been a fan of Rush and everybody who's uh, been foolish enough, in a way, to try to meet him has realized that he's really reclusive and he's really, doesn't like being in the spotlight at all. And even in limelight on moving pictures, he writes, "I can't pretend the stranger is a long-awaited friend." So that kind of, obviously his lyrics show his personality, but a lot of his tendencies spawned from that. Like he'd have people like try to say like, "I know the lyrics were made for me," and it would like freak him out. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so, but that's just one of his personal things.
Yeah, and I've noticed that a lot of his lyrics involved like personal stuff that involved him, like Fly By Night, Subdivisions, and Limelight. Those three songs detail uh, different events or different situations in his life.
Yeah,
Again.
I mean the especially Fly By Night is that was really his first. Well, obviously the record Fly By Night was the first Rush album that he played on, and the lyrics to the song Fly By Night are obviously about him traveling. He moved to London to try to find work in his late teen years. He dropped out of high school, actually,
Oh,
and then he
that.
yeah, and actually, funny enough, I mean, everybody knows that Neil's lyrics are so eloquent and so perfect, and it's actually really funny. His his high school dropout, uh, he soon realized that like he didn't want to seem or feel like he was behind his peers, so he just read and read and read, and on the Rush tours, and even when he was young trying to find work before he joined Rush, he was just reading as much as he could, and that's why like he's I mean to not beat around the bush for too long, my father, Joe Bergamini, got the chance to work with Neil on a book called Taking Center Stage, which was a compilation book of a lot of transcriptions for Rush and a lot about Neil's travels here and there. And so I have a family tie to Neil, and to kind of go back to that side of him, my father said that Neil was like one of the smartest people he'd ever met, and so it's interesting that like through the dropping out of high school and the lack of formal education, he became one of the greatest lyricists in music, really.
Yeah, that is incredible. Like to even have like that experience, and for to even got to know that such an intelligent and amazing mind slash musician like you and I could tell that like your father really knew Neil Peart, and I could tell like from a lot like you know him just as well, and you know a lot about his legacy and a lot about like his the kind of person he was. He was very very intelligent, and it's he definitely made that apparent in his music and from his experiences with other people as from what you just mentioned.
Yeah, it's honestly like it's so special. I met him when I was so young. The book, when did it come out? 2012 or 2013, I think, is when the book was completed. And so I met Neil shortly after that. He, my dad saw him every time he went to California. He lived in Santa Monica, I believe, for uh, the last part of his life. So whenever my dad went to LA or anywhere in SoCal, he would meet up with Neil. But I met him once when I was very young. I was in sixth grade. So how old was that? That was probably like 12 or 13. And I really didn't understand the significance of it until now. And you know, but almost that almost makes it more special because I didn't have any preconceived Neil's the greatest drummer ever. Neil's, oh my God, he's this big celebrity. I was just
Mhm.
going to meet another one of my dad's friends. And, you know, in,
Yeah.
in one way, I wish I held it, I wish I cherished it more in the moment. But in another, I feel like I wouldn't have it any other way. And it made it so special.
Yeah. It probably made it shine more. But I'm just gonna continue. I'm gonna continue on to the article, and then we could expand a little more from what we were mentioning.
Yeah.
Peart passed away at age 67 of brain cancer, and his death was announced on January 10th, 2020, in a joint message from bandmates Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson. And that, like, the funny thing is, where were you? I do have a question about this. Where were you when you found out when you found out his passing?
Wow. That was I don't know if I ever told you this actually, Lewis. But I was actually in Boston.
Oh, really?
I auditioning for Berkeley that weekend, and my audition for Berkeley was the following morning after. And the I don't want to like get too much into the details of like how much my family knew and didn't know, but we basically we were not expecting the news to break that early, so it was kind of a shock. Even though we had known, it
Mhm.
was a big shock that the world had known. My dad's phone just started blowing up, and but that's I'm not trying to get too much into the details of that, but yeah, that was a very eventful weekend, I would say. I mean, in a way, I think it was kind of it was special that for my father, he was able to bring his son to meet his hero,
Mhm.
and then when the time came, he was there to he was there with his son to cope with his passing. So
Yeah. I think that's definitely like a special moment, and I could not have like I could not have imagined like how the news affected you in such a way. Like I remember when I found out the first person that I wanted to contact was you. Like I found out like I think it was either on Facebook or it was like from like a news article that I got messaged on, and it said Neil Peart dies at 67, and I thought like the first person I needed to contact was you, and and like I wanted to know if you knew about that, and I wanted to know like what if you like just basically what the whole situation is, because I was in shock. Like I was in unbelievable shock, and I'm sure like when you found out like at the time that you did find out about the news, you were probably in just as probably in even more shock.
yeah, I mean, well, actually, one of the biggest it was actually something that I carried it for a while. It actually really didn't shock my family because, as I said, because my father and Neil were so close, we were kind of in the know a little bit. To what degree, I'm not, comfortable divulging, but we knew that he was sick and but so we weren't as shocked as everybody else who like just hadn't heard from Neil in the better part of 3.5 years or so. But it's still, of course, really sad. And I mean, I really, if I'm going to be totally honest, I really don't even think of it as the world lost the most legendary rock drummer ever. I think of it as, my father lost his friend.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible. I think I think that just says the kind of bond that you and your father had with Neil Peart, and there's no better way to describe it than the way you just said it right then and there. Like you didn't lose like you didn't just or you didn't really lose a big influence, even though you did. You lost someone. We all lost someone incredibly legendary. Um, Everyone that looked up to Rush and looked up to Neil Peart, everyone we did lose someone legendary. But to you personally, your father lost a friend.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's like when Eddie Van Halen passed away a few months ago. It's someone that's a rock star. They're larger than life, and to hear that someone like that is gone is, you feel it's as I'm a huge Star Wars fan, as anybody remotely close to me would know. I've even got my friggin' Star Wars Legos in the background here, but that's besides the point. It's almost like in some of the newer Star Wars properties, seeing characters that and love show up again that you've grown up with, and it's almost like that, where it's like just memories flood back, and the knowledge that millions and millions of people are feeling the same way that you are about it, and that it's really hard to put into words, but it's just a funny thing, we idolize so many people for so many different reasons, and then just by the nature of the human condition, it can all slip away. I'm actually gonna I don't know if anybody can I type in the chat or the comments? I want to type the book, Taking Center Stage, that my dad worked on.
All right, yeah, you could. I'm pretty sure you could type in the.
Does it work in the chat? Or the comments. Okay, I'll try it. Okay, I'll try chat. Here we go. Taking Center.
And I could even put it up here on the screen just so people watching can have a look and see.
Yeah, if you could pull it up. I mean, I'm sure that there's pictures of the cover on Google and such.
Okay, sorry, I got a message. Private.
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay, that was in the private chat, so I'll put it up in the main chat. And here we go. Taking Center Stage, Joe Bergamini. I could actually just show that real quick. I'll just look up the center stage. Oh, I found it.
Nice. I should have got a physical copy of it handy. That was bad on me. But
it's all right.
That's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, either way is like, I could even just show it real quick. Let me just go to the settings. There we go. This is what the book looks like. Taking Center Stage, and it's a lifetime of live performance, which I could not imagine. Like, I mean, Rush has been performing on stage for nearly 50 years, or it would have been almost 50 years. And this has got to be quite a read. I'll definitely take interest in reading this when I have the chance as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of like drum charts and transcriptions, but there are a lot of people that my dad has talked to about the book. that don't play drums, just buy it because it's got diagrams of Neil's kits over the years. It does have blurbs about his travels and the production of the records. And actually, to kind of side note about this book, I think one of the craziest things about that day that I met Neil is it was backstage before a Rush concert.
Oh, really?
So yeah, on the R40 tour at the Prudential Center when they played there, that's when my dad brought me to see him. And one of
Gonna perform at the Prudential Center. Wow.
yeah, I mean they played. They played. I remember that he actually went to the Garden to see them again with a bunch of his friends. But he obviously didn't go backstage then because, like I said, Neil is just a very private guy. Didn't want to meet a ton of people. But anyway, one of the biggest mind blown moments was from that experience was going after we hung out with Neil, going in an intermission, going to the merch booth to buy a T-shirt, and we saw this book. We saw that at the Rush booth, my dad's text was being sold because that was just one of those crazy things that just like even though some things about that evening were hazy, like that's a moment that's just still crystal clear.
Yeah, I could only imagine. I was actually supposed to go to that tour. I was planning to see Rush on that tour, and I'm still kicking myself for not going to that tour. I was supposed to go to the Madison Square Garden concert with a few friends, but uh, that plan it never came to fruition, and I don't think we were able to afford it at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big rock show. They're not cheap. So, and actually, that set list, I don't know, LA. I know this is, you probably have your schedule, but since that show and that set list was very much retrospective, reverse chronological, uh, take on the Rush discography. You want to talk discography a little bit?
Uh, yeah. Um, First I want to just read a little bit more of the article, and then I'll just we'll get right into the discography because it talks a little more about. I just want to at least get into the part about the Neil Peart about how he basically started in Rush, and then we could just stop with this article and go back to just discussing the discography and just everything about them because
Yeah,
I I definitely have something else to bring up to you guys. But
cool.
right, Peart joined Rush in 1974, replacing the Canadian prog rock trio's original drummer John Rutsey. The first album Neil played on was Rush's sophomore record, 1975's "Fly by Night," by Rush's third studio album. Caress of Steel, Peart took over from Lee as the group's main lyricist. Oh, I really thought that he was. I thought that he was the main lyricist in "Fly by Night," probably because the song "Fly by Night" is about how he went to London to
Yeah,
kind of just to start finding a job and starting his life. Driven by Peart's powerful and complex drumming, Rush became one of the world's most popular rock acts by the 1980s. Among the many memorable songs co-wrote are "Fly by Night," "Closer to the Heart," "The Spirit of Radio," "Limelight," "Tom Sawyer," "Free Will," "New World Man," and "Subdivisions." Definitely a lot of the big highlights from their albums. Like a lot of the more well-known songs from from their earlier stuff from the 70s into the 80s. And I know this is one of the most tragic and notable things that ever happened to Neil Peart, which I would never ever wish on anybody. And it was this. During the late 1990s, tragedy struck Peart. His 19-year-old daughter Selena was killed in a single car accident in 1997, and his common law wife died of cancer the following year. Neil sabbatical took a sabbatical from the band for a few years and eventually wrote a book about his healing process. He got remarried to an American photographer Carrie Nuttall in 2000. I probably butchered her last name, and the couple had a daughter, Olivia, in 2009. Right. So I I definitely I definitely want to expand more what we were talking about with this rather than finish the article. So there was something I wanted to I think I told you about a couple times, and I told Mason about too. My father actually saw Rush. I think when they were either performing in Puerto Rico or they were performing in New York, and it was during the Moving Pictures tour. I think he told me it was either the Moving Pictures tour or the Signals tour. Because I remember when I first started getting into Rush, my dad and I used to talk about Rush because he was also pretty big into Rush when he was younger. And when he was, because my dad went to a lot of rock concerts when he was younger. He saw bands like Judas Priest. He saw, I think, REO Speedwagon. He saw AC/DC, and he also saw Rush. So we were able to talk about a few things. He talked to me a lot about Moving Pictures and a lot of the music off of Moving Pictures because that was around the time that I started getting into Rush was when I was a junior and senior in high school, and I was about 16 or 17 years old around that time. So I was very much getting into Rush, and I was getting more into bass playing and just that kind of stuff. So Rush was kind of like my boost to continue my bass playing performance and all that, because I was like iffy about doing music and picking up the instruments, and then I just started expanding my horizons, and Rush was a big part of that. And I'm sure Rush was a big part of your uh, musical influence, as from what you were saying, which which kind of leads on to the discography. What was the first Rush album that you ever listened to that really got you into Rush?
That's a good question. I mean, I didn't. Uh, well, just by the nature of what was going on in my household at around the time I was deciding I wanted to be a drummer, with my dad working on various projects, the Neil book included. I really just heard songs here and there. One of my earliest one of the earliest Rush songs I remember hearing was Subdivisions, which was also the song that got my dad into playing the drums. I remember for whatever reason I heard Caravan, which is a song off of their last record, Clockwork Angels, and that one like stuck in my head when I was really young for whatever reason. I think because it was just on the DVD portion of the book, and my dad had to edit it, and I just heard it over and over. But as far as records are concerned, I definitely got into their early 80s stuff first, Signals and Moving Pictures, which are, of course, what got a lot of people into playing the drums are those two records alone. But yeah, so there was those, and Permanent Waves were like the first three albums that I like knew front to back, basically, among like songs here and there. But unlike a lot of I guess part of it is my age, of course. I can just look back and see the whole discography and look without a real biased eye toward any part of it. But I feel like I definitely got into a lot of their more recent stuff, like the 90s and 2000s albums, a lot more than a lot of other people. And I like those albums just as much as I like the Farewell to Kingses and the 2112s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think surprisingly enough, I got into Rush more from their 70s albums before I actually got into their 80s albums, because I believe the first album that I listened to was Hemispheres.
It's
The
interesting because like a lot of people, it's the opposite. They hear like Moving Pictures songs on the radio, and then they're like, oh, Rush, and then they go back to the beginning of the discography and they're like, all that new stuff is crap. And then they just listen to like Farewell to Kings, 2112 and Hemispheres. I think we both know a lot of people that are like that.
Yeah. So surprisingly enough, I had this one friend that I went to Ramapo with, and he, what do you call it? He was like a huge prog rock fan. Like we talk about different prog rock bands like Yes, like Genesis, like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and he actually, like, I try talking to him about Rush. He only knows like the handful of Rush, and I'm surprised that he doesn't know a lot about their like really early proggy stuff. Like he knows like Moving Pictures, he knows Signals, I think he knows Permanent Waves, and I'm like, if you like Yes, and if you like a lot of those big proggy albums or proggy bands, definitely listen to A Farewell to Kings, because I think A Farewell to Kings was kind of like their like they have their sound, but they had their influences still there. Like A Farewell to Kings, you could hear a lot of their influences, like each of the members' influences, like Geddy Lee with Chris Squire, Neil Peart with Bonham, and with the jazz drummers that influenced him in the past, and with Alex Lifeson with his classical influence and a lot of his jazzier playing.
Yeah.
And it's it's very unique on just like how people know this band, and it's, I think from your perspective, it has to do with a lot of like what made Neil Peart, like what how he really made Rush. And I think that the Moving Pictures and the Signal stuff was like the prime example of his drumming. And I'm sure that other albums, and I'm not saying that other albums that he's made with Rush don't define his drumming, but a lot of people, or when they get into Rush or they get into his drumming, they look at Moving Pictures or Signals, like with Subdivisions, with Tom Sawyer, with Limelight, with New World Man. Like there's definitely a lot of those hits that people get into, and they're like, wow, this is really good. This guy's a really good drummer. Let me see what else he's done with his band.
Yeah. I mean, no question about that. And I mean, I feel like the greatest thing about all the members of Rush, but particularly Neil, is that he was always looking for the next thing to make him better. And you talked about his jazz influence a little bit.
Mhm.
And he studied jazz really heavily in the 90s and such, to the point where he started actually playing traditional grip, which is, for people that don't know, I got my drumsticks back here. One sec. A
Definitely.
traditional grip is when you hold the stick like so, and you
Ah,
play it with leverage from the back end, as opposed to what the right hand would do and what many people do with the left hand also, which is called matched grip, is you just hold it normal, like you would a fork or a knife when you're eating dinner, basically. So he started playing that way because that's how a lot of the jazz players play, which he quickly grew out of because you can't play a 3-hour rock show
mhm.
like this.
Yeah,
um, but
I think
yeah,
that's like something that Carl Palmer is known for too, with that traditional jazz like playing in
yeah,
his.
and I mean, this does get a little bit into just like drummers in general, but a lot of it is just preference. I mean, some drummers just prefer to play this way, no matter what style they play. Some players just want to play mash. Um, so, but yeah, and I mean, but knowing the thing about Neil is that he wanted to know all the styles and he wanted to know all the ways you could play. So he specifically, even at the height of his career when his playing was burning and he really didn't have to change, he just had to be able to play the shit he always could play.
Yeah, yeah,
He still wanted to.
I eat my dinner with traditional grip.
Of course, Mason does.
Yeah. What were you saying?
Um, just the fact that Neil wanted to expand and get better, even though he was at the top of his game. He had hit the jackpot. He was the biggest rock star in all of progressive rock music,
Mhm.
and he was still like, I want to get better. And
And
actually, one of his greatest quotes, which sorry I interrupted, but
no,
one of his greatest quotes that really rings true for any artist is "What is a master but a master student?"
mhm.
And that it's clear that he lived that way too.
I think that Rush was that kind of band, and I think Neil Peart was just a product of that. Well, not really a product, but a perfect example of what the kind of musicians and the kind of people that they were or that they are, which to Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson as well, like they were the members that always felt they could be bigger than what they already are and like better than what they're already playing. And that's the biggest respect that I have for them as musicians and as a band, because what you told me is another example of like Neil was that kind of drummer that wanted to continuously get better, figure out what can he do to improve his playing. And I think I've even brought this up. I think I've even brought this up in one of my other videos with what I learned from music playing with musicians in the past. And it's that if you expand your horizons and you like start listening to different different musicians and different bands and different like artists and stuff, your playing actually will improve. Like you could say you just do country and jazz and blues. You could say you start listening to this like R&B or soul group, or you listen to this like heavy metal group and you're like, wow, this drummer's kind of good. What is this drummer doing? You you can like look at what he's doing and see like what he's playing, and you could be like, oh wow, so he's doing it like this, he's having a technique, like this is his influence, this is his technique, and you could learn to do it yourself, and you'd be like, wow, this is a new ability that I can learn. I i kind of picked i kind of picked these drummers brains and played this way, and now I can play like this, and now I could add this to my music. And Neil Peart seemed like he was that kind of drummer.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And I mean the any exercise, there's always a dilemma when you're learning to play an instrument, because there's always exercises that we all come across that are like, sure, this improves my technique, but I'm never going to use this when I'm playing. But I feel like everything can be dissected and you can use everything to some extent.
Mhm.
So I feel like, even just analyzing styles that you don't typically listen to is going to make you better. And considering what the Police did with all their reggae influence, that's what they're known for. You can actually hear that the Police were one of Rush's favorite bands in the 80s, because a lot of the grooves in on specifically Grace Under Pressure and Signals, Neil and Geddy are playing the very syncopated, Police-esque, reggae rhythms, and which is, I think, is kind of cool. It really just validates everything we want to believe as artists of about getting better by listening to things that you're not used to.
Yeah. And I actually never even realized that the whole like like that Rush wanted to, or Rush looked at other bands while they were a band and while they were big themselves and incorporated that to their music. That's actually a pretty unique take on just writing your music. And looking back to it now, because Grace Under Pressure is like one of my favorite Rush albums, like, and so is Signals, but they they incorporated. I could definitely see that now that they incorporated a lot of the Police's music. And I noticed with Geddy Lee in YYZ, if as what you said here, Geddy Lee incorporated uh a lot from Teen Town, the Weather Report song. If you ever
Yeah,
Yeah, like if you ever hear Geddy Lee's bass solo parts on YYZ, it's very reminiscent of Teen Town by Weather Report.
yeah, and that actually reminds me of another like Rush music trivia fact. In a in La Villa Strangiato, um, the part that uh, which part was it? The part that goes like dun 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 dun. That's actually, I think they didn't even know this when they wrote it, because they were all just so influenced, they actually um unknowingly got that from like a Popeyes episode.
Oh,
and,
really?
and actually like the studio that makes Popeye like sued them.
Really? Oh
Yeah,
my.
that's and obviously like since it was already produced and it's already a song, like they couldn't change it obviously, which I mean the song is great as it is, so it's good that they didn't. But it's
Yeah.
so funny because it's like in interviews when they're asked about that, they're like, yeah, we didn't even know, like, but you play the clip of that from the episode and you
Mm.
next to
The
the song and it's like clear as day that they're like exactly the same, which is kind of funny. But
yeah.
it all just goes back to like what your influence is and how your sound develops.
Yeah. Man behind the mic, what's up, man? It's man behind the mic from Red Sings the Blues. Thank you for coming on or stopping by. It's good to have everyone come on. Uh, but the I I they were definitely like, I feel like Rush was one of those bands that they were a rock band, and they were like every other rock band, but they were also very different from other rock bands, like, at the same time. It's like, yeah, they were a rock band, they loved playing the music, they loved, like, different types of, like, rhythms and, like, uh, just sounding like rock music, but they also were their own thing, and they also, like, incorporated different styles to their music, and their music was ever changing. So that's kind of what made them similar, but also the same as other rock bands. But what do you think of that?
It's yeah, I mean it's an interesting take. I mean, I as someone who loves progressive rock as much as we do, it's honestly really hard to compare the bands. Like I feel like Rush, even though they're all progressive rock, they're three of my favorite bands: Rush, Kansas, and Yes, and they're all totally different. And in many ways, I can't even compare them. And I feel that a lot of modern rock and metal bands kind of fall into the trap of trying to sound poppy to get on the radio, which I mean, that's a struggle obviously, and you gotta do what you gotta do. And as long as it feels good, power to you. But you know, back when Caressive Steel almost bankrupted and had made Rush have to stop because they lost money on their tour, and the record company was like,
Gonna
you can't be making these like 20-minute prog epics because they're not going to sell, and you're going to have another record that doesn't sell at all, and your tour's going to suck. And they went to rate 2112 and puts them on the map.
Yeah.
you know, so it's just a lot of it is how the music industry has changed, and a lot of it is just luck, and a lot of it is, if you know your audience and you know who you are as a player, things will come.
Yeah, and I think I've said this before. I Rush was definitely that one of a kind band, because I this is just my opinion. You guys can also feel free to disagree with me. I think they have one of the best rhythm sections and one of the best synchronized, like, musicians with each other. They have one of the best rhythm sections in a rock band, and I think they have three of the most competent musicians that have, like, just perfect chemistry with each other, and they knew when to start and they knew when to end with their band. Like, a lot of people didn't realize this, like, they knew that R40 tour was going to be their last tour, but I know they performed their hearts out, and they did the best that they could. And I believe from the Sirius XM interview that I went over when I first started this podcast, was when, like, when Geddy Lee was being interviewed on the tour, he said that they actually performed a lot better than they did in previous tours. Like, Geddy Lee was taking care of his voice. Neil was, exercising and, like, learn and figuring out how to, play the drums and like not exert himself or hurt himself, and they just all how was that set list for R40? What was your opinion on that set list?
Oh, the set list was incredible. It's the I mean, the second set alone is a Rush fan's dream set list to hear at a tour. I'm gonna actually have it on my phone. I'm gonna pull it up. When I saw them, I know they played the Camera Eye instead of YYZ. But I love both of those songs anyway, so it doesn't matter. But on the R40 Toronto recording that they put out as the DVD and the CD, the second set alone is Tom Sawyer, YYZ, The Spirit of Radio, Natural Science, Jacob's Ladder, Hemispheres, Cygnus with a drum solo in the middle of it, Closer to the Heart, Xanadu, and 2112. That's like all the big ones that the old school Rush fans want to hear. And of course, like I said earlier, I was too young to really appreciate that. But now I look back and I'm like, wow. It's like, if I was able to see that now, I would go nuts. I would flip out.
Yeah, I remember when I saw Iron Maiden on their Legacy of the Beast tour. I remember thinking like this is the perfect set list for that band. I'm actually reading the set list, and I could probably pull it off. I could probably pull it up over here, real quick. Let me see. Can you guys see it? I'll just zoom in real quick. Can you guys see that?
I can see it.
Yeah, their first set list. Let's see, the Anarchist or Clockwork Angels, depending on. Oh, okay, it's changed on this day. Clockwork Angels, Headlong Flight. Yeah, a lot of their stuff, a lot of their first set seems to be like early to like, well, not early to like later works, and then ends with like earlier stuff.
Yeah, I mean the whole point of that set list for the 40th anniversary was a reverse chronological approach. So they start with, the Anarchists and the Wreckers and Headlong Flight, the Clockwork Angels tunes, and then go to Snakes and Arrows with Far Cry and Main Monkey Business, etc., until you get to the encore where they played stuff from their first album.
Yeah, wow.
So yeah, that's a it was special and I didn't even know it kind of thing. But it is, as I said, I wouldn't change a thing about it. And, in this beautiful time that we live in, I have, from the comfort of my own home, I can pop in one of these DVDs and pretend like I'm really there.
Before, let's see, the first set list is like kind of like showing like, hey, this is like we want to see what you think of this first set. But then the second set, I'm looking over here and I'm like, holy crap. Like this is definitely like the longtime Rush fans' dream. Like they got Tom Sawyer, which is literally their most famous song ever. Like their most famous, the song they're known for, like how Bohemian Rhapsody is to Queen and Run to the Hills is to Iron Maiden, or Enter Sandman is to Metallica. That's basically what Tom Sawyer is to Rush.
Yeah. I mean, that was the whole, they totally went out with a bang as far as their songs. But I mean, people look at this set list and like, oh my God, the second set. I actually love all the songs in the first set just as much, just because of the nature of how I got into Rush, and I just love all their albums. But yeah, I mean, but part of it is, it's like, even if you go to the show and you're a longtime fan, if you pick up on what they're doing, and I think even Geddy says like, this is what we're doing. We're going in reverse chronological order, and we're going to play like the newer stuff first, and then we're going to go back to the older stuff. Like, even if you don't necessarily like the newer stuff, like from Snakes and Arrows, it's like you sitting as a fan are like, oh, they're going to play all the old stuff at the end of the show. So it's like, you kind of like, it builds the anticipation and the hype a little bit, I suppose.
Yeah.
And let's actually just highlight from the first set, Um, song number 10, "Losing It." One of my favorite Rush songs ever,
What
first of all.
is that?
And
I forgot what record that's from.
it's from Signals, and it is the only Rush tune, aside from the string arrangements in Clockwork Angels, where they added a fourth member. They actually had Ben Mink, the violinist, play
Mhm.
with them on Losing It. And longtime Rush fans, thought that this song would never be played live. But they, for a handful of shows, I don't know exactly how many, but not the whole tour, they brought out either Ben Mink or Jonathan Dinklage, which was one of their violinists in Clockwork Angels on that tour. And it's just, when I go back and watch the videos, especially of from Toronto when they first brought that out and no one saw it coming, and hearing the crowd just go friggin' ballistic is it really just shows you how special Rush is and how devoted uh, people are to it and the fan base.
Yeah, I could tell they truly loved their fans, and I didn't even realize that. I definitely got to listen to Signals again because it's been such a long time since I've listened to that whole album. But this alone, this set list alone, just tells you how much they loved their fans. Like I could not like I would not I would definitely say that I probably would have loved seeing the first set just as much as I loved seeing the second set as well, because like yeah, it's a lot of their recent stuff and not everyone's going to like it, but this shows like they want to play a lot of their recent stuff, but they also love their fans and will play like deep cuts and will play a lot of fan favorites like Xanadu. I Oh my god, I'm kicking myself even harder for not going to this concert.
I'll lend you the DVD, bro.
Yeah. Not same though, man.
I know, I know. Yeah. But the thing is though, is Rush has, there are a lot of their fans that really just like the Hemispheres and Before stuff, but
Mhm. Oh
you
yeah,
know, they have just as many fans that listen and have listened to all of their material and love the new stuff just as much.
mhm.
I feel like my dad and a bunch of his friends are the perfect example of that.
Yeah, like I think Clockwork Angels is a fantastic Rush album, and
Oh
I
yeah,
think it doesn't get enough credit for its quality compared to albums say like Signals or 2112 or Farewell to Kings. Like it could be it could be on par with that, like in quality or like production and performance quality.
yeah, and that was an ambitious record too. They didn't do it in the studio, but of course, like I said, for the tour, they had the string ensemble. They did full string arrangements for the whole album, and it's a concept album. And Neil collaborated with I forget his name, the author, but they wrote a book based on the story of the concept album, and it's basically like a steampunk hero's journey kind of style thing. And I read it, and the book is good, but I mean the fact that they wrote it based on the album and it actually sticks true to what the album story was, very much to a T, is makes it all the better.
Yeah. If anyone wants to if anyone wants before I close this picture down, anyone wants to have a look at the set list, here you go. Um that's I definitely got to check that book out. That book, or if you find the author's name, definitely let me know and I'll even post it on here, or I'll post it on the uh next time I go live. But
I'll Google it really quick.
if any of Rush fans like the oldies, here's the second set. There's Tom Sawyer, there's Red Barchetta, which is one of my favorite Rush tunes. I think the bass tone is like the perfect rock bass tone that can be found in like from that era, or at least just in any rock band. I think that has one of the best bass tones in any rock song, Red Barchetta. And YYZ, of course, that's another. They can't. I don't think that that Rush could ever not play that song live. like post moving pictures. We got the spirit of radio, the spirit of radio, as what we would say, Nick.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's the author of Clockwork Angels is Kevin J. Anderson.
Kevin J. Anderson. That name rings a bell.
I know it does to me too. I feel
Angels.
like he Kevin J. Anderson. I'm actually gonna look him up. You know what I feel like? I feel like he writes some of the Magic the Gathering novelizations.
Oh, really?
He might. Let me.
Here's the name of the book.
Oh,
Clockwork.
he's wrote. He's written some of the Star Wars novels.
Oh, really? That's probably how
Yeah.
I know him.
Yeah, I know this name. Yeah. He
Yeah.
wrote the novelization for the movie Dune, which is a famously kind of a not so good science fiction movie. But one of my other favorite bands that's not a prog band, Toto, wrote the score for that movie.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. They're like really well known for that. That was like one of their well known soundtracks or movie soundtracks by
Yeah.
a band.
And actually, just to go on that tangent for a little bit, when I saw Toto live, the last two times I saw Toto, they actually played the main theme of Dune.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's actually like it's too bad the movie is not great because the score is so good.
Yeah, it happens. Like you might not enjoy a movie, but it might have some amazing music that you can't help but love.
Oh yeah, I mean there's plenty of movie scores that you know if I'm just in the mood to listen to, without watching the movie, uh, I'll just pop it in.
Yeah, I forgot there was a song that I liked. It was from a movie that wasn't as good as the song, but it it was definitely like there was some really good tunes from there. But
Yeah.
uh is blah, blah. I'm having brain farts here, but is there anything else you want to say about Neil Peart or any other thing about like Rush's music and how it's influenced you or how it's just really just how it's affected you in your life as a drummer or as a musician overall?
I mean, I've said pretty much everything that there is to be said. I mean, aside from I think about Neil pretty much every single day of my life. I got a big poster of him on the wall next to me, and wake up every morning and see that, which is kind of cool. And yeah, I wouldn't be a drummer if not for him. So
Yeah,
yeah,
if you don't mind me mentioning this, like when I first joined you and Mason in Progress Avenue, I remember the first thing that you and I bonded over was Rush, and because you guys were talking about like, hey, what kind of bands do you like? And I'm like, oh, one of my favorite bands is Rush, and they were like, oh, I'm a
I
huge
just lit up, of
yeah.
course.
It's like a huge like it. I was I told you like I was a huge Geddy Lee fan, and you said like, oh, I'm a huge Neil Peart fan. And I'm like, oh my god. And then you said, oh, my dad knows Neil Peart, and I'm like,
I don't mean to flex, but it's actually kind of funny. Like sometimes I feel bad bringing it up to like people who are huge Rush fans because it's like it feels like a brag.
yeah,
I suppose as the great uh, Yogi Berra said something to the tune of "It's not bragging if it's actually true," or
yeah.
something like that.
One thing that happened, I think this was around the same time that I joined you guys. It was when I started going to Ramapo and when I started practicing with you guys regularly. Geddy Lee was at the bookends he was at the bookends, which isn't too far from the Ramapo, and I was gonna go get tickets. Like I found out like a
He,
week or
he was
two.
on his big beautiful book of bass tour, right?
Yes, and
I was actually I actually really wanted to go to one of those events, but you know, I was still in high school at the time, so I didn't really have any easy means of buying a ticket or getting there.
yeah, I was gonna buy a ticket to go see him, and I as soon as I went to go get the ticket, it's like, "Oh, sorry, you're sold out," and I'm like, oh man, like I think you also had to buy his book, but quite
Yeah.
honestly, I would have done that. I would have like, I know I'm like fangirling over here for over Geddy Lee, but if I had to buy his book in order to meet him, I would have done it.
I mean, his book is definitely something that, you know, you would appreciate. It's
Oh yeah,
really it's just him cataloging his collection of instruments, and they're, obviously it's all basses,
yeah.
duh. So, but yeah, it's something that you would definitely be into. So,
Yeah, of course. That's pretty much the two pluses. Like, I wouldn't just want to get that book just to meet Geddy Lee, although that would be a good
oh, and
idea.
I'm sure hundreds and hundreds of people did that.
Yeah, but for someone that's very bass enthusiastic as me, I would definitely have loved to have that book. I'll probably get that book one of these days because of like I love hearing about Geddy Lee and his basses and like just his performances and just like the whole backstory behind some of his basses. Like I know Geddy Lee, people don't know this, but Geddy Lee's first bass when he played on Rush's first album and when they first started making music, when he was first in Rush, was a precision bass. And a lot of people think that it was a Rickenbacker, but actually he started using the Rickenbackers when Neil Peart joined the band. And it's just there's like I definitely have to do more research on Geddy Lee's basses from the 80s onward because I know he somewhere in between the 80s and 90s to 2000s he starts using the jazz basses and he starts like cuz he goes in between there's like a a period where Geddy Lee goes from Rickenbackers to jazz basses and I know he uses Steinbergers which was the headless basses and he used a couple other basses too. I think he might have used a Yamaha, but I know one of them was Steinberger and there were a few others. I think there was a Lembic as well, but there's definitely history between that. But that's just that's just me fangirling over Geddy Lee.
Yeah. I mean, I love hearing people talk about their gear and just gear in general. So, I mean,
Yeah,
and of
same.
course, I could talk about drums and Neil's drums for
I,
hours. So,
I even love like hearing guitarists. Like it's not even just bass players that I love talk about their gear. It's like drummers and guitarists too. Like they definitely have unique stories with theirs, and I'm sure Neil Peart had some excellent stories with his gear, like with his drums and percussion and all that. And I could probably listen to that stuff for hours on end.
oh yeah. And I mean, like, one of my well, I guess the reason that listening to people, just musicians in general, talk about their gear is so cool is because, like, you feel the same way about your gear and you
Yeah,
want to talk about it and you're excited about it. So it's
yeah.
really special.
Hashtag
Like,
relatable.
yeah, exactly. It's like special to hear somebody talk about their gear and because it's something that you invest so much time and money and effort into, and
Yeah.
it's hashtag relatable.
Just put
Love
that each time I see something musician like that I relate to.
it. Yeah.
Be a new banner, just like drink your water. Which please do that, guys. Drink your water. I don't care if you're like not even singing. Just drink your water because that'll help. That'll even help you with your drumming as well. Drink your
Oh
water.
yeah, so important.
But
PSA.
yeah. Sorry, what were you saying? I kind of cut you off.
I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah.
I'm actually bad. I don't have a glass of water handy right now.
No, you're fine, man. But make sure you have one after this show at
I
least.
will. I will.
But um, before I end it, do you have anything else you want to say about Neil and just like anything like his legacy and just like what really is the takeaway from this show that really has you wanting to say something about Neil Peart and his like legacy, his extraordinary legacy.
I mean, we pretty much touched on everything. Like I said, you know, he's larger than life,
Yeah.
pretty much. Like there's no two ways about it. But you know, it's as annoyed as he, you know, was and would be at all the fanboys and whatnot.
Mm.
It really shows that his influence on the drumming world is second to none. Second maybe only to Ringo or
Yeah,
Buddy Rich.
yeah, or John Bonham.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, honestly, I could not have said that any better myself. Like, I think what made what made Neil Peart stand out from a lot of other drummers that came even after him and came before him too was just his ability, like his ever he was like a musical chameleon. He was constantly changing his colors and changing his just changing his like changing everything, and it was to fit his band's music, and we could not have had it any other way. And I don't think any other drummer filled that spot as well as Neil Peart did, in not just Rush but in progressive rock and rock music in general. Like there was always like there was always a page to take from his book, and from both his literal books and just like knowledge to obtain from Neil Peart as a drummer and as a human being. And I think that's what really makes him shine and really makes the rest of the band shine too, because they were ever these were this was a group that knew who they were and knew when to change. And Neil Peart was a perfect example of that. In Like, he was just that perfect example of that ever changing sound that was Rush. Cause to be honest, like he made Rush. He he was part of their evolution, just in music. and and nothing really got in the way of their sound, other than the choices that they made. And whether or not they were choices that they were happy with, they were still, it was still a part of their music to always be remembered by. And I think that's how a lot of people should remember Neil Peart, just for his legacy and just his ever-changing styles that he had as a drummer and as a musician for Rush. And I know we haven't touched up upon this too. Um, he was actually a fine lyricist, and I know you were talking about that he went to England and he did a lot of reading for his he did a lot of reading in his like downtime, and I think that definitely helps him intellectually, and it helps Rush have such elegant lyrics for just everything that they came out with post Fly By Night, or even during Fly By Night. But like Caress of Steel onwards was definitely the big transition to Rush being just some rock band from Canada, just being some average hard rock band from Canada, to being one of the biggest progressive rock acts to ever live. And that's how I'll always remember Neil Peart. Like, he was in he he was in one of the biggest bands that influenced me as a musician, along with many other people like you, your father, and just every other band that came after Rush, that had a similar sound to Rush. But guys, that is actually how I want to end it. Like, comment, share, and subscribe if you want to hear videos similar to this one. I will keep you guys updated on the audio versions of the podcast. Just please remain patient with that. And tomorrow, stay tuned for the cringe performance of the week. That will be sometime later today. I'll keep you guys updated on what time I will be having that live. So keep on the lookout for you. Thank you again, Nick, for coming on. Like, this was I I could not have I could not have been able to explain this topic as well as you could. and you were such a big help to it. So it was honestly an honor to have you on the show. So thank you
Oh,
again.
thanks, Lou. This was great. This was fun.
But guys, I hope you have a good rest of your day, and as always, stay tuned.